999ers risk their lives every day, keeping us safe.
My heart was racing, but you just do it because you're a police officer.
But all too often, they're abused and attacked.
I have been punched, kicked, spat at, sworn at. I think most of us have.
These personal attacks on police, firefighters and paramedics are at an all-time high.
I could feel the blood running through my shirt.
He grabbed me around the throat with both his hands,
Leaving them traumatised and unable to work.
It's then left me questioning, is this the job that I want to carry on with?
But while the violent criminals responsible are hunted down and brought to justice, our protectors fight to get well and back on the job.
I'm not going to get beaten by somebody who decided they're going to try and hurt me.
Ready to face the next critical incident.
Stand still! Police routine to show yourself!
Coming up. A rookie PC battles his way through a smoke-filled house to rescue the resident.
When someone's physically resisting you, it's difficult to move them.
The house is on fire, we need to go!
2 West Midlands paramedics are determined to return to their duties after they're subjected to a violent knife attack.
I knew I'd been stabbed, but my main priority was to protect my crewmate.
At that point, I just froze.
And a Southampton police sergeant risks his life in icy waters.
I was definitely losing my grip. I couldn't hold on.
I did fear for Stuart's life at one point.
In Wolverhampton, paramedics Dina Evans and Mick Hipgrave have clocked up nearly 30 years between them in the West Midlands Ambulance Service. And they certainly wear their badges with pride.
I think when you put your uniform on for the first time, it does change you. I suppose it's a bit cliche that you put the uniform on and you sort of fit into your role. When you take your uniform off, you're a different person completely. You know, I'm a mom, I look after my kids and everything else, but when you put the uniform on, you completely change.
I love being a paramedic because of the difference I can make to people's lives. I like working with people, and we have a hugely rewarding job. Yeah, that's okay.
You are in charge of saving people's lives. You know, the responsibility is absolutely massive, and more often than not, there's just the 2 of you, and you have to manage that between the 2 of you.
But both dedicated ambulance workers have experienced the dark side of the job.
Being a paramedic on the front line has changed a lot over the years. When I first joined, it was a very different job to what it is now. Nowadays, it's a lot more challenging. There's a lot more aggression and violence towards us.
In my role, I think the time I've been here, I have had my fair share of violent incidents. I have been punched, I've been spat at, I've been sworn at, I've been kicked. There's been so many times, and you know, I think most of us have. It's very rare that you'd get a person that say, no, I've never been assaulted.
But nothing could prepare Dina and Mick for the events of July 2020, when they were on a welfare check, which paramedics and police often get called to when a friend or relative hasn't heard from someone for a while and has concerns for their well-being.
En route, we discovered that the gentleman in question hadn't been seen for a couple of days by his family. There'd been no verbal contact, and his mom became concerned.
There was no concerns for violence. I don't think there was any concerns for suicide. I think the patient had just been suffering with a little bit of depression.
When we arrived on scene, his mom was standing outside the front door, along with another relative, I believe.
Spoke to the police, and they said that he wasn't answering the phone to them. So we were banging on the doors, banging on the windows, and there'd been no answer.
We spent at least 20 minutes trying to rouse him. Obviously then, because there was no contact with him, we then became concerned that he was badly injured. So then we made the decision, along with the police, to force entry into the property.
A police enforcer would take up to 20 minutes to arrive, so they decided to take the door apart to gain access.
So Mick took the panel off the door, and instead of passing it to me, he leant it against the wall, which meant that we swapped places. So I stepped forward first, and I said out loud, hello, and I said the patient's name, and I said, are you okay? And as I said that, the patient just ran at me with a knife in each hand. The large sort of kitchen knives with the black handles that you use. He had one in each hand and he sort of held them up in the air and just ran at me.
My natural reaction was to protect her, so I covered her up and pushed her out towards the front door. And whilst doing that, this gentleman then stabbed me in the side. I definitely felt it go in. I could feel the blood running through my shirt, so at that time I knew I'd been stabbed. But my main priority was to protect my crewmate.
I think at that point, I just froze. I remember thinking, my T-shirt's wet. Why is my T-shirt so wet and warm? And as I patted myself down, I just looked down at my hands and I just saw all the blood, and I remember thinking, oh, where's this come from? And as I pulled my T-shirt away, I saw the hole in my chest, and I just shouted really loud, I've been stabbed, I've been stabbed.
I turned and looked at the front door, and this gentleman was standing there with the two knives in his hand, shouted obscenities and very, very angry. So obviously, fearing for my life, I picked up a wheelie bin, and I remember sort of kicking the wheel bin towards him to stop him coming out the property. And then all I heard then was taser, and I believe the male police officer then tasered him.
We have an emergency button on our radios. I managed to press my button, and that's when I said, I've been stabbed, I've been stabbed. And I just saw this hole in my chest that was just pumping of blood. It was just pouring out. And I shouted, oh, I'm bleeding out, I'm gonna bleed out. And then I remember Mick saying, me too.
Later, it's a race against time to save Dina and Mick.
I just said, I'm dying, please help him.
I remember looking up at the sky, and I actually thought I was dead.
Between June 2020 and June 2021, there were nearly 47,000 police-recorded offences involving a knife or sharp instrument in England and Wales.
Right, stay outside. Stop. Is there more people in there?
In November 2020, Northamptonshire Police received 999 calls from terrified shoppers who had been threatened by a knifeman in a supermarket. In this body-worn camera footage, specially trained armed officers entered the store.
Right, drop it! Drop it now! Drop the right! Stay where you are! Stay where you are! Put your hands together!
They quickly disarmed and arrested him. The offender was charged with 2 counts of having a blade, which was sharply pointed in a public place, and public affray. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Still to come, a police sergeant endures freezing temperatures when he rescues a young woman from the sea.
I saw Stuart and he was shouting to me that he couldn't hold on for very much longer.
And a young PC's heroic actions are recognised.
I'm really honoured to be nominated for this award. It's once in a lifetime experience, isn't it? So I'm very thankful. At 25 years old, Taylor Ladner has just a few years of policing under his belt. It all started when I was in 6th form, so it must be about 2015. My friend decided he was going to join the specials, so I decided I was going to do that. It's a bit cheesy, but I knew from the minute I got in the car that it's what I wanted to do full time. The first blue light run, there's no sort of adrenaline rush like it, and I knew from that minute that's what I wanted to be doing. There's a lot of things I love about the job, but ultimately I find that the real enjoyment is when you do a good job. So like, someone's been burgled and you get their property back for them. That's what you get the real satisfaction, the long-term satisfaction out of. Once he'd realised his dream, Taylor had to undergo a tough 18-week training programme to achieve the rank of police constable. Once you're signed off and you graduate, you're put with an experienced police officer for 10 weeks who's your tutor. And during that time, they teach you the ropes, how it's actually done out on the street. Your tutor was like your safety blanket. If you weren't sure what you were doing or you're a bit worried or nervous or whatever, you could always turn to them and ask them what to do.
As police officers, we can probably all remember the moment when we're split away from our mother hen, our tutor, and we go off to do our independent patrol. But at that point, you are literally driving a police car around a town or a community, responding to whatever comes in. And when you turn up, you're wearing that uniform and the public won't know whether you've worn it for 5 minutes or 30 years. They expect you to be able to think quickly and take control of an incident.
And with just 6 months service under his belt, Taylor was certainly thrown in at the deep end when he attended an incident in Wellingborough.
I remember driving around. I was single crewed, so that means there's one police officer in a car and you're expected to go out and handle calls on your own. And an emergency call came out from the control room saying there was a domestic incident going on at this address. There was mention that the female party had sort of threatened to set fire to the house, so I made my way there as the closest officer and I had backup coming from a fair distance away. Domestic incidents are normally handled by what we call like a double crewed resource, so that would be 2 police officers in a vehicle. The reason for that is oftentimes domestic incidents can be quite volatile. You've got 2 parties there who are potentially in drink or got heightened emotions. They can be sort of physically aggressive towards you or verbally aggressive. So it's a lot to manage for a single officer. So normally you would be sent with a colleague, but if you're the nearest resource and you're on your own, that's what you've got to do. You've got to go and deal with it. When I arrived at the scene, initially, I saw a lot of people gathered outside the house, and obviously I knew something had gone on, but it wasn't until I got a lot closer that I realised the flames were visible, and at that point I thought, well, we're on here.
379, need to get the fire here quickly. The property is actually on fire.
It's quite clear. He's saying to the control room, we need the fire brigade here, we need fire and rescue service here. So he's computing what's going on in his head as he turns up, and you can see that the house is clearly on fire. So, you know, you put your feet into his shoes and he's got to then make a split decision as to whether he stays back and waits for the fire and rescue service, which you might say is the sensible thing to do, whether he goes in to try and save the woman.
Is she still inside? Can you get round the back?
I arrived outside the house, obviously realised there was flames. I couldn't get in through the front of the house, so a neighbour offered to let me in through his house. They share a fence, so you go through the gate into the back of the property.
Hello, it's police!
I saw the female in question.
Out the back!
She was really distressed, I think is the best way to describe it.
Look, come on!
She was screaming, leave me, I wanted to die in that fire, that sort of thing. So obviously I was trying to deal with her as best I could.
Stand up! No!
When someone's physically resisting you, it's difficult to move them. No matter how strong you are, you can't lift that dead weight.
The house is on fire, we need to go!
I'd been told prior to that there was potentially a child in the address.
Is there kids upstairs? I'm gonna check upstairs.
I ran upstairs, past where the fire had been set, checked the rooms as best I could to make sure there was no one there.
With the smoke getting worse, Taylor needs to act quickly.
I could see the smoke was quite thick upstairs. I don't think a child would last long, and what I mean by that, you could lose consciousness quite quickly. In those circumstances, it was impossible for me to breathe when I went up there. I was coughing, the air itself was hot to breathe, it was burning your lungs as it was going in. I was really concerned that this child was in serious danger.
Smoke kills much quicker than the flames. And so I guess what was going through Taylor's mind was how he will get through that smoke-filled room in order to check for the children being there and putting his own safety kind of second.
I'm sure on some level I did think about it and sort of weigh up the pros and cons, but obviously there's someone in there that needs your help, and who else is going to do it if not me? You're on the clock. You've only got a short amount of time before you lose consciousness, and I'm no good to anyone if I'm another casualty.
Having searched all the rooms, Taylor doesn't find any children.
I was massively relieved when I realised there was no one upstairs, because I didn't think anyone would still be alive if they were up there. I got back downstairs as quickly as I could as well, so I could breathe again.
379.
With the fire under control, Taylor needs to keep the woman out of the smoke-filled house. Later, the owner of the property resists Taylor's attempts to keep her safe.
Listen to me. Get your hands off me.
In Wolverhampton, while attending a concern for welfare check, paramedics Dina and Mick have been violently attacked.
The patient just ran at me with a knife in each hand.
I looked across and I could see that she'd been stabbed in the chest.
As Mick tried to protect his crewmate, a knife was plunged into his back.
I definitely felt it go in. I could feel the blood running through my shirt.
The police took control of the situation and tasered the man, while Dina and Mick fought for their lives. Mick makes an emergency call on his radio for assistance.
I've been stabbed. My partner's been stabbed in the chest, and I've been stabbed in the chest.
And we ran into the garden and just collapsed on the grass. I just remember thinking, I can't run anymore.
I believe that Dina had got a life-threatening injury and she might not survive. So my focus was to try and treat Dina.
He was bleeding from his side and I could feel it all pouring into my hair. And I remember thinking, we're gonna die. We're gonna die on this grass. And I remember saying to Mick, please don't let me die. Please don't let me die, I've got children.
I just remember saying to Dina, I can't breathe, and started to lose sort of my senses around me. I remember looking up at the sky, it was blue and sunny, and I actually thought I was dead, I was gonna die.
I grabbed my radio and I pressed the open channel button on the side. And I just said, please, please, I'm dying. Please help him. And I said to Mick, I'm gonna die, I'm sorry. I'm gonna die. And he kept saying, no, you're not, no, you're not. You're not leaving me.
After their desperate calls for help on the radio, medics raced to the aid of their colleagues.
We had lots of medical assistants arrive at the time. 2 helicopters, numerous double-manned ambulances arrived, and a care team on the cars.
It was heartbreaking to see them in that condition, to see friends and colleagues fighting for their life, and see the look in their eyes when they're looking at you to save that life.
Dina and Mick were rushed to a major trauma centre for emergency treatment. For Mick, it's a lucky escape.
My wound hadn't pierced any major organs, it was just a vascular wound. So I was very fortunate that it missed a lot of the major stuff. So I was just treated for a single stab wound once the bleeding had stopped, and then I had, I think, 5 stitches.
But Dina's injuries were far more complicated.
I developed a massive blood clot in my chest. And it was so painful. I remember saying to the nurse, please take this pain away.
As the doctors fought to save Dina's life, her sister Cassie, also an emergency service worker, received the shocking news of the attack.
Because I'm a police officer, obviously I see things like this happen on a weekly basis, and I see the injuries that are caused, especially when people are being stabbed in the chest. So when I'd heard and seen that she'd been stabbed in the chest, I just didn't know what to do. It was just horrendous, because most people don't survive being stabbed where Dina had been stabbed. I just felt like my world fell apart, if I'm honest.
And then I just remember obviously being put to sleep. I developed a massive blood clot in my chest, and it had developed under my chest muscles. So my chest muscles had to be cut through, and to clean out the wound, clean out the blood clot.
The surgery was a success, but the chest wound had caused substantial muscular and nerve damage.
I think I stayed in for 3 nights, and on the 4th day I said, look, I want to go home.
When I left hospital, all I was thinking about was, how was Dina? I went home and really just sat and thought, stared into space. I couldn't believe it actually happened. It was traumatic.
Although the doctors wanted her to stay longer, Dina left the hospital. But back home, she struggled to cope with her injuries.
I remember going to lift something and I couldn't move this arm. And I remember thinking, well, I can't move this arm. Why is this arm not moving? And when they came to see me, they'd explained that they'd cut through the chest muscles, and it had, you know, caused a little bit of nerve damage. In addition to this wound, I got a slash wound on the other side. Why did he do it? It's not like I said anything horrible, or I could not understand why. And I don't think I'm ever going to know that.
Later, Dina and Mick begin the long process of recovery and finally return to the front line.
This is what I know, this is what I do. This is my job.
Back in Wellingborough, while responding to a reported incident at a property, PC Taylor Ladner arrived and discovered a very different situation.
This property's actually on fire. Is she still inside? Look, come on.
She was screaming, leave me. I wanted to die in that fire.
The house is on fire, we need to go.
There was potentially a child in the address.
Is there kids upstairs? I'm gonna check upstairs. I've got her outside now, I don't know what's going on. No, just come back. Alone.
The woman is desperately trying to return to the house, and Taylor struggles to control her. Taylor's colleague, PC Nicola Nawaz, knows only too well how tricky these situations can be.
It is difficult to deal with someone who isn't listening to instructions that you're trying to help, because you can make somebody aware of the risks and aware of the situation, but unfortunately some people just don't want to listen. It's just about asking the right questions, convincing them, trying to tell them that this is the best plan. But it's definitely very difficult for one person to deal with on their own.
What's going on? Does anyone know what's gone on?
In that incident, I had to physically drag her out of the address and then restrain her on the floor because she was trying to resist me and get back in the address, and I didn't know what other sort of dangers there might be in there, and in her state of mind, she might hurt herself or someone else.
Stay down. What's going on here?
It does make it hard to deal with a situation when you don't know exactly what's happened. She could have been a victim, that fire could have been accidentally set, or she could have been a suspect. She could have set that fire with the intention of hurting herself or someone else. The call originally came in as a domestic dispute, obviously has to involve 2 partners or 2 parties, shall we say. So my assessment was made even more difficult by the fact that the male party was nowhere to be seen. It just made it even more difficult to try and understand what had happened.
Get your hands off me!
Taylor's emergency call was answered, and his colleagues arrived at the scene.
At the moment in time, you're under arrest.
As soon as we heard Taylor shouting for assistance and needing help, we all piled down there as a big team and tried to get involved to help him out as best we can.
Get the cuffs on him.
Look at it, yes!
There's no better feeling than when you see those blue lights come in when you really need the help. Even as a police officer, that sense of relief is sort of overwhelming. And I thought, right, the grown-ups are here now. They're going to get me out of this situation I've got myself in.
Do not still. As I arrived on scene, there was a lot of screaming, a lot of shouting, lots of members of the public about in the street. It was very chaotic, and this lady was very challenging to deal with. Even for, you know, 1 or 2 cops, it would have been difficult. So it needed a good 3 or 4 of us to try and sort this lady out because she wasn't listening to any of his instructions.
Stay still.
Stu, I've got
You need to keep it.
As soon as I arrived and other officers, we all took instruction from Taylor. He knew exactly what he needed to do. It was just he struggled to do it on his own.
We've got one under arrest for arson to life.
With the woman arrested, Taylor has a chance to reflect on what's just happened.
When you're in a situation like that, especially if you're not experienced, when your adrenaline's going, you get sort of auditory exclusion, so you'll struggle to hear what's being said to you. People are shouting at you, but you can't sort of make out what they're saying. Your vision will sort of narrow. You get what they describe as sort of tunnel vision. So it is really difficult to deal with an incident and be thinking about what you're doing while your adrenaline is going. Initially, I wasn't thinking about myself. I think it only hit me how dangerous the situation was when I was upstairs and I took that first breath in of the smoke and I realised I can't breathe at all. I realised, right, we're in trouble here. We need to sort of get out of this situation as quickly as we can. And that was a real sobering sort of moment for me. I'd probably do the same, but I maybe took like a fire extinguisher out the car. I mean, we have them on hand. I don't know why I didn't just think to do that. But I think it was an element of inexperience and youthful exuberance that made me just do it without thinking.
The woman was charged with arson and sentenced to 12 months imprisonment, suspended for 24 months. She was ordered to undertake 25 days rehabilitation, to participate in a 6-month alcohol treatment program, and asked to pay a £140 victim surcharge. And his heroics have been recognised, with Taylor being nominated for a Police Bravery Award.
I'm really honoured to be nominated for this award. It's a really prestigious and classy event tonight, so I'm really thankful to be given the opportunity to come down here. It's once in a lifetime experience, isn't it? So I'm very thankful.
The annual event, held in London, honours courageous officers from across England and Wales. This year, there are 93 nominees from 42 police organisations.
We were looking at the examples of nominations that we could submit for the national awards, and Taylor's was one that jumped off the page. He was so young in service when this incident happened. What resonated with me personally is my worst nightmare as a police officer in 30 years of policing has been turning up at a house fire with occupants trapped inside before the fire brigade, and what I would do. And you know, you all ask yourselves, what would I do in the circumstances?
Tonight the focus must be on the very best of the police, those that represent the vast majority who serve this country with integrity and selfless dedication.
When I told my parents that I was nominated for this award, they were really, really proud of me. My mum's got an embarrassing display of my awards in the living room, so I'm sure this one will be added onto it at some point in the future.
One thing you find about police officers, they're very humble. They will say, well, it's in a day's work. They will say, that's my job. No amount of pay pays them well enough for some of the things they have to deal with. In the small of the night, when everybody else is asleep, they're the people out there picking up all the risk that's around in society, and they just get on and do with it.
I feel reassured that I acted in the correct way, and that if I was posed with a similar incident, I'd like to think I could deal with it again. I mean, who knows where my career's going to take me from here. I mean, hopefully I've not peaked too early.
Southampton is one of the largest and busiest ports in the UK. At Town Quay Marina, ferries sail passengers along the south coast and to the Isle of Wight. As a member of the Hampshire Constabulary, Sergeant Stuart Ross is proud to call this his patch. He's been a police officer for over 17 years, and prior to that, served in the Royal Air Force.
In 2003, I went out to Iraq and served in Optelic, effectively in infantry soldier work, and it changed me and It gave me so much of a better outlook in life.
After having a family, Stuart left the military and joined the police. First in the firearms unit, and then as an armed response officer.
I then applied for my current role as a rural and wildlife crime police sergeant on the Country Watch team for Hampshire Constabulary, and that's where I sit today.
But all his experience could not prepare him for the shocking events of December 2020, when Stuart was travelling back to his station from the Isle of Wight.
I got on the Red Funnel passenger ferry at around about 10 o'clock in the morning. My boss was picking me up the other side, and I was going to be making my way back to Lyndhurst Police Station for the day. Whilst I was on the ferry, I had a meeting to attend online, so I had my mobile phone out, walked off the ferry, through the Red Funnel terminal, was still on the meeting, and within a very short space of time, my boss arrived. Instead of driving off, we actually pulled into a nearby parking space just to finish off the meeting. And when we pulled up, I saw a young girl in front of the parking bay towards the end of Southampton Town Quay, and didn't think anything of it at all. There wasn't many people around because the passenger ferry had sort of spilled all its passengers out. And then I saw the girl stand up in front of the car. She was on a mobile phone, which again wasn't anything unusual, but this young girl turned around and waved. It seemed unusual for me because I knew there wasn't very many people around at the time.
I wasn't quite sure what she was doing there, and I did turn around to see if there was someone else behind us, because it looked as though she was trying to get someone's attention.
And I looked at my boss and thought that was a little bit unusual behaviour. And my boss said to me,
I'm just going to go and check that she's okay, because it didn't feel right, and as I got out of the car...
The girl disappeared, jumped into the water. It was a split second. I immediately got out of the car and I looked over the edge of the pier, and I could see this young girl in the water, maybe about 5 metres away, in a frantic state, flapping her arms, her head barely above the water. This young girl's drowning. This young girl cannot swim. At that time, I'd made a decision that I was going in the water. I remember going under the water. I remember the green sort of murkiness of the water. I didn't have any fear. My only consideration was I could never see a young girl's life taken in front of me. It was middle of the winter. It was cold. I swam out to the girl, took hold of her. I then swam with her to a nearby pylon. The tide was reasonably low. It had exposed the barnacles on the side of the pylons. I can only describe myself as holding onto the pylon like a monkey would hold onto a tree.
I felt completely helpless. I wanted to go in as well, but all the training that we have is if everybody's in the water, then there's no one to help them to save. So I made the decision to stay where I was.
And then I thought, well, we're here now. Now what am I going to do? I had all my uniform on. I had my boots on, my work boots, my leather boots. So everything was pretty heavy for me. And I remember shouting to Corinne, can you try and find a life buoy?
This was the first one that I grabbed, and it had a rope on it. So I remember when I threw it over, I was able to keep hold of her.
Yeah, and that's the one I put over her head and underneath her arms. I didn't think to put it on myself, to be honest. I thought, well, I'm here to save the girl. I'll put the life buoy over her head and put her arms through it so it's underneath her. I do remember starting to get cold, and the barnacles on the side of the pier were really starting to grip into my wrists and my hands.
There was no way for them to get out apart from a very long swim to the shore. Due to the coldness of the water, there's no way they would have been able to swim that far. So I was looking down and I saw Stuart, and he was shouting to me that he couldn't hold on for very much longer. And I sort of looked around and I could see a boat in the distance. And so I ran up to the end of the jetty and sort of tried to weigh the boat down. It seemed a long way off. And at the last minute, when the boat was about to disappear around the corner, they turned around, and it was that moment that I just, oh, thank goodness someone's coming.
I saw the nose of the boat turn in towards me, and that was a huge relief for me because I was definitely losing my grip. I couldn't hold on.
I did fear for Stuart's life at one point. When he said, I can't hold on any much longer, that was the point. If the boat hadn't come, I think I'd have ended up in the water. I wouldn't have been able to watch my colleague drown.
Stuart and the girl made it to the boat and were taken safely to the shore, much to the relief of Corinne and Stuart's partner, Andrea.
I was extremely proud of him. Stuart's tough, and he wouldn't have even hesitated. He said himself, he literally just jumped in. It suits him being a policeman. He would help anyone that needed any help.
The young girl made a full recovery, and Hampshire Police provided her with ongoing support.
She said to me that she would never ever do that again because she now realises that there are people out there that care and that are willing to risk their own life to save somebody else's, and that sort of really touched a heartstring for me.
In Wolverhampton, paramedics Dina Evans and Mick Hipgrave have been the victims of an extremely violent knife attack.
I remember saying, please don't let me die, I've got children.
Mick was treated for a single stab wound and received stitches, while Dina had emergency surgery for a blood clot to the chest. Back home, the muscle and nerve damage to her chest has affected Dina's mobility.
I couldn't move my arm at all. It was completely numb. The pain, I couldn't describe it because it's like nerve pain, so I couldn't actually pinpoint where the pain was. And when I came home, I thought I'd be able to do a lot more than I could. Things like washing my hair. I had to get my kids to help me. I'm sort of the type of person that bounces back really quick. And I think I expected to be able to do that, and it hasn't happened.
As well as the physical trauma, the horrific attack has had a huge impact on Dina's mental health.
She asked me to go up to the shop around the corner here the one day. I come up with my dad, and I thought, you know, strange, never asked me to go to the shop with her before. Just walk up the shop with the kids. And I could tell it wasn't right. She's got the tendency to look behind her. Who's behind her?
I developed PTSD, I developed OCD, so I was constantly checking windows, doors. I've had lots and lots of therapy, and it's brought me to a point where I'm trying to manage my feelings. I mean, I still have panic attacks, and when I do, they are awful.
Mick has also had a tough time coming to terms with the incident.
My stab wound was very close to my liver, I was told on the day, so I was very lucky that it didn't, you know, pierce my liver. I often think about how close I was and how lucky I was at the same time.
So how are you feeling now, son?
Yeah, I have good and bad days.
Yeah.
More sort of good days now than bad ones. But...
Yeah, because you had lots and lots of bad ones, didn't you?
Yeah. It's the mental side which is affecting me more now than the actual physical side.
He always says, I'm fine. He never said, no, I'm not. But you could see in his face, you could see in his eyes, he wasn't. He wasn't right.
It was a tough 6-7 months. I've been diagnosed with having PTSD from the occupational health doctor and being treated by my GP for that as well.
After a few months off work, Dina and Mick made the decision to return to their duties, but it was too soon.
It definitely wasn't the right time. Although I tried, I pushed myself, I sort of went up and up and up, and then I just crashed, massively crashed, and I think it just knocked me back. So I had another couple of months off work.
I came back to work probably around the December time, so I've been off for about 4 or 5 months. It was nice to get back to work, to get back to some normality. However, the thoughts never went away.
Putting the uniform on would be a proud moment before. Now it's anxiety, it's nerves. It can happen to anybody, it happens so quick. There's nothing we could have done to change it, and I wouldn't have done anything different. And you just think, well, what can happen today? What if it happens again?
Dina has written a powerful victim impact statement, which she'll read out in court before the perpetrator is sentenced.
I'm a paramedic. I'm also a sister, a mother and a daughter. I go to work to help people and I love my job. I've been in pain every single day since the attack. The incident has affected me a lot mentally. I see your face the exact moment you stabbed me over and over. I see that image at night when I try to sleep, and you're there whether I close my eyes or open my eyes. I don't feel safe anymore, not even in my own home. That day you took all that I am away from me. You took my confidence, my humour, my trust in nature and my happiness. Everything in life is affected by the choices we make, and that day you made a choice to pick up 2 large knives that you knew would possibly cause fatal damage. And you made a choice to stab me with those knives. But hopefully your sentence will be enough to act as a deterrent to others who think it is okay to attack other emergency services when they have just made a choice to simply do a job.
At Wolverhampton Crown Court, the offender pleaded guilty to 2 counts of unlawfully and maliciously wounding or causing grievous bodily harm with intent. He was sentenced to 9 years in prison. It's over a year since the incident, and Dina and Mick are both back in full-time work.
That's all been stopped, that's stocked.
Suction works,
Yep.
just check the parapack.
Rather than trying to throw myself into it, I'm doing things a lot more slowly. But this is what I do, this is me. And I don't think I could see myself doing anything else now.
Outside of work, Mick has found the perfect way to unwind.
Well, having the dogs helps de-stress me, especially when I'm walking them. It takes all the thoughts away that I had before, helps me sort of enjoy a bit of peaceful time. I've been supported by many, many different people, but family are the ones that I would normally turn to. Without those, I think I would have been in real trouble.
What lessons have you got at school tomorrow?
Dina has found being a single mum to Matilda, Rosie and Florence has been a welcome distraction.
Tomato sauce, Linda dips, all over my mouth.
I've had to pull things together for them because it's affected them as well. And I think as a mother, it doesn't matter what your own problems are or what's going on with you, your kids come first. So I've had to make sure that they're okay, which has given me that focus.
I used to miss her so much because she could barely even hug us.
I feel like mom again.